we have had an opportunity to look into our future to a certain extent over the past couple of weeks with youth that are highly engaged, highly sophisticated in the political arena for their age, maybe even beyond their age, certainly. But let's take a step back and also remember that there's still going to be some regressives in the future, and they're growing right now. Here is Allison Camrata sitting with a student panel on guns, and wow.
You'll hear from people who say, if you ban semi-automatic weapons, then only the criminals will have them.
Does that mean we shouldn't try? That we should hand them to them legally? Like, we're not creating these red flag laws. We're having background checks that take on average from 30 to 2 minutes at the most. And if your background check gets flagged after 3 days, you can still get the gun if it's incomplete. That's ridiculous.
If somebody wanted to go shoot up a school, it doesn't show up on the background check. I mean, if you look at the Las Vegas shooter, he was perfectly legal to get a gun. Nobody knew that he was going.
And that's the issue.
That's
so why don't we cut it off at the source?
How will we defend ourselves if you take that right away? And that's what the left is trying to do.
We're human beings first, right? Our lives matter before political parties.
I agree.
And you don't know any of our political affiliations.
You don't know any of our political
affiliations. You don't know that.
And I think, well, I'm not attacking you guys personally. I'm attacking the ones that seem to be backing this whole movement.
This is a student-led movement, and that's what it should be. We were the ones who had to hear those gunshots, and we were the ones who stared down the barrel of a gun. And that's the end of it. No other adult politician, no one funding money into this. People can donate the money and we can accept that, and that's fine. But they're not controlling or influencing us. The NRA is influencing every single politician that's accepting money.
All of you right here are telling me right now none of them are funding this movement.
They're donating money, and they are encouraging gun control. They're standing for what they believe in as well.
You're prioritizing your rights over lives
for gun violence
at this point.
My solution for gun violence is allowing people to have guns. The more people that are armed, the less shootings there will be. Have you ever seen a gun show get shot up? No, you haven't seen that. Why? Because the guy's going to get shot.
Okay.
Guns are the solution, not the problem.
All right. Well, now,
I just have to say, this guy, it seems like he's like one of these conservative proteges, like who got it started like when he was 12. Right. And instead of like snapping out of it when he went through puberty, he just is aging into it. So he's already like 60, but he's 17.
Let me just address this. There are two reasons why we don't hear about violent incidents taking, shootings taking place at gun shows. One is because gun shows have strict insurance and liability requirements around securing the firearms. All the firearms are, you can't get near there with a loose firearm. And all of the firearms that are there are cable locked or zip tied so that you cannot operate them. This is to prevent theft, obviously, and to prevent people from using guns in any fashion. So his theory that everybody could pick up their guns in that moment at the gun show and shoot the guy is actually not the case at the gun show. With that said, here's just a piece from 2013. For the sixth time in 1 week, man shot at gun show. 5 people were shot at 3 different gun shows on Gun Appreciation Day back in 2013, as just for an example. So, I mean, these are just like anecdotes and just sort of, I guess, things that you might assume are the case. I mean, we know that there's been mass shooting events on military bases, for instance, where there's presumably a lot of guns. And to achieve what that young man wants to achieve, we actually need to have forced gun ownership.
I mean, here's where Shapiro is partly right, but from a position of complete bad faith, right? Because just because somebody is a student or even has lived through a shooting doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have the right opinion on it, on gun control.
Absolutely. But I don't attack him as having any more or less a stupid opinion than I would Ben Shapiro, who is not a victim of gun. That his whole line of, his whole line of attack, that they're not qualified. I have no problem hearing from that guy, whether he was at that shooting or not. Maybe we're just hearing from him because he's a student and they want to balance out other students. My issue with him is not that he's a student. My issue with him, what he's saying is gobbledygook.
Yeah, you got to judge it on the merits of what they're saying.
Of course. But Ben Shapiro has to bring it up as if people are not judging these people's, political demands on any other basis other than people don't want guns. I mean, we know how the lines are divided in this country. They have a problem with it because there's political salience to their calls.
I mean, I think there is a little bit of that going around on the right as well as the left.
What's that?
Standpoint epistemology, what he was trying to say when he said identity politics. And I actually looked into what they are actually asking, and I do have some left critiques of it.
Who's the they?
The Parkland students, they published an editorial in The Guardian here, and one of their demands is increased funding for school security and armed resource officers.
Absolutely.
Which is pretty problematic, I would say. Also wanting to relax privacy laws so that mental health care professionals can communicate with law enforcement is incredibly problematic.
That is also problematic.
So, I think we should have room to criticize the things that they're proposing on the merits.
I watched 10 minutes of that Ben Shapiro thing and heard not one single critique of any of their policy positions.
Oh, certainly. He's garbage, obviously.
One single critique.
But I think we shouldn't let all the bad faith critics get in the way of good faith criticism.
Yeah, I think we've said the attempt to prevent specific people from getting guns based upon rather, I think, dubious assertions of people's mental
or criminal records.
I think is problematic. I would like to see a widespread banning of guns, which we had John Paul Stevens came out today and basically said to the students, stop nibbling at the edges.
Yeah,
push for a repeal of the Second Amendment.
But the broader trend is this idea of these students and a much, much bigger movement, including the woman we played yesterday, I forget what organization she was from, that are
NAACP.
Yeah, the NAACP, that they're taking this on as a political issue and they're taking on a sense of engagement in a larger process. So even if they misalign with the policy now and they should be criticized on those, I wouldn't call those policies, problematic. They're wrong. They're just wrong policies. But the way they're positioning themselves and their demands and their sense of taking ownership of the process is going to pay major ancillary benefits beyond guns, in my view. So it's a good long-term trend, regardless of that mishap with the policy. And I wouldn't be surprised if John Paul Stevens' comments opens up more interesting demands.
I hope it does.
I'm glad to see too that they're getting involved, and I hope that they come to more broad politics from that. The conversations about disarming the police and the military really cannot be neglected in this.